Hello everyone, and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Middlegames series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and in this video we're celebrating the King's coronation and also the release of my new book, Re-engineering the Chess Classics, and we're also celebrating some great play by Komodo Dragon and also by Leela against Stockfish. Why am I showing you these two games? Well, it fits in quite nicely with some questions I've been getting a lot recently, in the past couple of months. And the questions surprised me a little, but well, since a lot of people are asking them, also some very strong players, it seemed worth answering them. The first question is, why do I need the latest version of an engine? Isn't an old version of an engine good enough? And that's not as silly as it sounds. I think it's really a question of what you're looking for from an engine. If you just want it to have it like, a sort of a static tool like a hammer or a spade, just to hammer home some tactics for you, then pretty much any version of Stockfish will do the trick. Any reasonably modern engine will also work. Spotting the win of a piece, stuff like that. Yeah, that'll all work. But if you're looking for more than that from your engine, if you're looking for real insight into positions, then I think it's very important to move with the times and use recent versions. Jeroen Nomen and I, really experience this every time we made books for the TCEC Super Final, because we come up for one season with some very, very sharp looking positions that we thought, these are just completely decisive, and for our season the engines would have a bloodbath with them. But then if you tried the same openings the next season, it would lead to lots and lots of draws. Simply, in that 6 months of development time, the engines had improved enormously. Defensive technique had improved beyond recognition. You don't really notice it just by looking at simple tactics, but when you give a real challenge like the openings that we had for the super final, then you really noticed it. Engines are improving all the time. Their insights are changing all the time. So if you really want to use engines, to the maximum degree and really make the most of them, then it is quite important to keep up with the latest versions. And then the question, the really big question that people ask is, why do I need multiple engines? Stockfish is so strong, that's just good enough, isn't it? And Stockfish will get you a hell of a long way with its insights and strength. Of course it will. But it isn't infallible. And, these two games I'm going to show you are going to show you, positions where other engines with their own strengths saw the position, much better than Stockfish did. And, from that point of view, then you can say, well, I've got the opportunity to have not only Kasparov on my team, but also Karpov and Carlsen. Why would I deny myself that and only ask something to Gary? It's and that's the thing. You can just play with Stockfish, but if you've got the opportunity to ask Leela and Komodo Dragon, for example, as well, for advice, why wouldn't you? So we're starting off with this position, which was Komodo Dragon against Stockfish from the very, very long time control bonus at the TCEC. And this position, very, very sharp, a pretty dodgy perk for black. Stockfish trying to shake things up, played the move a4 to a3 just to open up the white queen side. Now, both Stockfish and Leela in this position just want to play the quiet b3, which is also quite a strong move, but gives black, a little bit more opportunity to solidify. You go there, you go castle queen side, and well, we've got the e5 square, we've got some control over the centre. It's good for white, of course, but not 100% clear. However, Komodo in this position, Komodo's evaluation after a3 jumped into the sky, and the reason for that was that it wanted to play this move. And it's quite interesting actually, because both Leela and Stockfish, if you look at their not just their main line but the lines after, they of course both saw this move. Engines are never blind like us, they never miss moves. But both Stockfish's and Leela's evaluation of this next concept, in actual fact, was not that impressive. It's only later when you go through and follow Komodo's idea out to its conclusion, that they suddenly both jump and say, wow, yeah, this is really, really good. So what did Komodo Dragon do? I mean, if you fancy a very complicated exercise, then you could stop the video here and have a look. I just jumped out of my chair when I saw this this idea. Really, never occurred to me in a million years, I can say that. So what Komodo Dragon did was play f takes e5 in this position. So just allowing a takes b2, and you sort of think, well, this does look a little bit dodgy, doesn't it? But Komodo Dragon's idea here was simply astonishing. I mean, basically, you just want to use this central pawn mass here to completely shut out 3 black minor pieces. So, I mean, this knight is already shut out by the pawns on g5, h4. Not going to do a great deal. This bishop is looking at a pawn, so obviously we've got to give that some cover. And of course, this knight on e7 is restricted by the pawn on e4, pawn on d5. It hasn't got very much mobility at all. So what did Komodo Dragon come up with? Well, hold on to your hats, because Komodo Dragon played the move knight c5 with some evaluation of plus 1.4 or something. Knight c5, what is the idea? I had to blink twice before I even spotted what the idea might be. Knight d3. And what is white aiming for here? Castles, knight takes c5, obviously forking queen and bishop here. So the queen retreats to c8, has to. And now the move bishop d4. And bishop on d4 protects the pawn on e5, so we're blocking out this bishop on g7. And, well, look at the black position. What on earth can black do? What sort of activity has black got for the minor pieces? Well, Stockfish played bishop g4 in this position. It's the only minor piece that you can move. And here the follow-up comes along. E6 arrives. So actually what Komodo Dragon's looking for now, it's not only to block the bishop on g7 behind the center. Actually, now that you've got the bishop here, you're going to try and exchange off pieces, and then just career through the center. Actually, the black king, once the f7 pawn goes, has really got not very much space at all to hide. So, bishop takes c2 was played, queen takes c2, bishop d4, rook d4. Now, I mean, I do find it quite amazing that this position is so good. I mean, I'd say compensation for white, right? Because these pieces are so bad, and you've got so much space. But, yeah, winning is shocking somehow. But actually, it just seems that whatever the engines do, they can't actually break free here. And, well, in the game, f takes e6 happened, takes, d takes e6. And this position was basically completely winning for white. I mean, these knights have got no scope, and if black doesn't do anything, then we're just going to start invading and delivering mate on g7 at some stage. Stockfish played for the exchange. But all of these endings with these two knights against the two rooks like this were very, very bad. And I do really believe this. I had a very bad experience once against Jonathan Rowson in the London Classic. Was the first round. Hadn't played for a while. Was a little bit rusty. Got a good position. I think I won 2 knights for rook, maybe rook and pawn. I think it was just for a rook actually. But somehow, I played some inaccurate moves, and all of a sudden, 1 rook against 2 knights was with an outside pass pawn was absolutely killing me, and I lost a bad game there, which I really was kind of expecting to at least be pressing with, So these positions can get very, very difficult, and what just basically happens is that the engines just come in with the pieces. Eventually, some rooks will get exchanged, and the pawns just run there basically. Only thing you've got to be careful about is not allow b5 rook a7 mate, which would be embarrassing, but doesn't happen very much in engine games. But as you can see, this is quite a complicated example, of course, but you just see that, in this position, you get a non-Stockfish engine, Komodo Dragon, just assessing something, a very sharp and beautiful combination, really way better than Stockfish, and again, that's not a super common occurrence, but it does occur. And this next example is even more striking. So we're just going to load up the game. and that's Leela 0 against Stockfish from the Windfish Ballad bonus. So before I show you this game, I think I should show you just a few moves from the middle game of the classic game Capablanca Bogolubov from the London International 1922. If you like classical games, you might remember this one. It was in this position. Capablanca was white, Bogolubov was black, and Capablanca came up with a plan that's incredibly famous. He played the move f4, and after queen e7 he played the move g4, bishop g6 and f5, and buried this dark squared bishop in the corner. And it looked incredibly ugly, all these weak dark squares, and the pawn on e4 looks like it's attacked, but actually Capablanca had understood really well that the key thing was long term, that this bishop on h7 was shut off. And you fast forward say another 11 moves, and you see that Capablanca had managed to exchange off the queens, get this knight onto e6. The bishop was trying to get back into play, but it was still desperately difficult. And white was just planning to somehow pick up this pawn on a4. So this whole concept, this pawn structure, with d5, e4, f5, g4, shutting out a light squared bishop, has become archetypal in the Lopez. And we'll just remember that, because what Leela did is pretty similar here. I'll just take you through the opening moves. It's not too long, and it is quite interesting. So this was the opening book provided by Windfish Ballad himself, I think. c3, knight f6, castles, d4, bishop b6, and Stockfish went for this line: takes, knight takes e5. And now Stockfish played knight takes e4. Not the only move. I actually expected Stockfish to play c5. I've got a very similar game in the Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, where Stockfish Classical played the move c5 and didn't take back the pawn. But anyway, knight takes e4 was played by Stockfish, and the interesting thing about this is the evaluations. So Stockfish was, really pretty calm about this, getting close to 0 already. Komodo Dragon even calmer. I mean, actually, in the probably after another 10 or 12 moves, I think Komodo Dragon was even giving black a slight advantage in my long play games on my big hardware. But the intriguing thing is that Leela was already around 0.3, 0.4, which that's sort of Leela saying, hey, wait a minute, there's danger in this position. And what is the danger? Well, the danger is in actual fact that Stockfish has actually taken, without realizing it, a very responsible decision in the opening by allowing the bishop to be driven back to b6 and with this pawn mass c3, d4 in the way, because this bishop is not going to have much scope, and Leela absolutely realizes that from the very first moment. So rook e1 played to chase away the knight, and now, very interesting, on my hardware, my big hardware, 94 threads, Stockfish against Dragon. Stockfish's first reaction is to play bishop f4, after which Dragon plays a5, and that bishop is sort of safer than it was. When you play the move a5, you're probably fairly likely to be getting in c5 sometime soon. What does Leela do straight away? a5, bishop a7, and now not bishop f4 like Dragon, but bishop e3. Bishop e3, supporting the pawn on d4, and sort of dissuading black from playing c6 to c5. Right from an early moment, you can see that Leela understands that this piece is potentially a problem, and is just doing everything, with natural developing moves to stop black from getting it free. And what you really notice over the next idea basically is that Stockfish is about 12, 15 moves behind Leela in realizing that there might be a problem, and then Dragon's probably another 5 or 6 moves later. So what happened in the game? Bishop e6, and now this move knight f3, which is quite intriguing, because Stockfish and Dragon were both playing the move knight d3, with the idea later of playing b4 and knight to c5. And this dark square bishop was often getting exchanged for a knight. Leela's plan is completely different, and for Leela's plan, the plan that Leela wants, as we'll see, it needs to defend the d4 pawn as much as possible. So that knight isn't going round to d3, it comes back to f3. Just anticipating, that f6 is going to happen from black. It's one of those subtle Leela moves. Could have played knight d2 first of all. That wouldn't have made much difference. So after f6, Leela plays b4, and what are we doing here? Of course, we're clamping down on c6 to c5. Just look at that bishop on a7. I mean, with those double c pawns, the bishop can't get back into play through there. The only way you're going to be able to do it is to play c5, give up a pawn, and then play c6. But that's not absolutely great. For all that, it's not clear how much of an advantage white has. But in general terms, the danger that black's in potentially is huge. And that's something that Leela, you see in the evaluations, really understands. And you also see it in the PVs, the things that Leela suggests. But that's something that Stockfish does not understand very well at all. So knight b5 played by Stockfish here. Yeah, all right, not fantastic. I mean, what you do see from Leela's PV is that quite a lot of effort was going to put the queen onto d7 f7. Why the queen going d7 f7? Well, you'll see a little bit why later. And also moves like b6 were occurring quite frequently. With the idea of just trying to dilute that white pawn structure and make it easier to get into c6 to c5. But Stockfish, in this particular case, very rare to say that, is pretty oblivious to what is actually threatening to happen here. So knight b5, queen c2, queen d7, knight bd2, rook e8, rook ad1, and now rook ad8. And this is really where Leela's evaluation really started to jump. Leela's plan was to play queen f7 in this position. It thought that was still okay, although it's not completely easy. What is Leela's plan? Well, the idea is that after c4 we can go knight a3, fork these two, so you're not able to play the move c3 to c4. And next move you're going to play hopefully is going to be knight d6, and then you can play knight c4 and for at least for a while keep control of those light squares and stop white from playing c3 to c4. Now after rook d8 it looks like you're stopping c3 to c4, but you can play c4 because if you take on d4 we just take and then play knight b3 and you're going to lose that piece on d4 just with the pin on the d file. Doesn't seem so bad, you might say. Okay, we get in c4, but Stockfish plays around a little bit. We get knight d6, rook c1, bishop h5. What's wrong here? I mean, Komodo here is giving black a slight advantage here. But Leela plays, just a very important move coming up very soon. And after that, you suddenly start to understand what's happening. So a few nice, quiet consolidating moves. Leela's already feeling very confident. King to h2. g5, that was a real trigger for another jump from Leela. And now this move, I wonder if you can see it, this move c5. And maybe you'll think back to the game I showed you, this Capablanca against Bogolubov, and we've got this structure against a black bishop on the other side of the board, and actually even worse because black's got double pawns on the c file, so this bishop is just never ever going to get into play. Basically, you're shutting out a whole piece, and there's nothing that black can do about it. And for Leela, this is more or less winning. It's not super easy because obviously when you put up a wall of pawns like that on one colour, the other squares become weak, so black's got plenty of play on the light squares. But long term, Leela thinks, I can cope with whatever activity you've got. I don't believe this, and that bishop is going to be decisive in the end. And not going to go through it in huge detail, but the way that Leela played was quite beautiful, because this is also what AlphaZero always did beautifully against Stockfish 8. Obviously this is happening at a much higher level. I mean, Stockfish this version is way stronger than Stockfish 8, but it's the same basic principle that Leela just understands what a long-term weakness that bishop is, and then doesn't mind giving up something like a pawn, for example, just to exchange off some of black's active pieces, because he knows that what's remaining is an absolute disaster for black. And that's absolutely what happens here. So knight g3, knight g1, lovely idea, h5 and then f3, just making sure that if black goes h4 that this knight can come into e4. And the really cool thing about it is that knight e2 is played, bishop h5, rook f1, bishop f7, knight c3, bishop e6, rook c1, queen g6, knight d1, bishop f5. And here Leela doesn't worry at all about giving up the pawn, because this light squared bishop, it's going to be exchanged off for a knight, but that's one of black's active pieces, and the more pieces black exchanges, the closer you get to only having this guy left. So knight e3 is played, and black wins the pawn, and now we get our knight into f5, we exchange off rooks, and you look at the resulting pieces. We've got a brilliant knight on f5. This knight's fine, but it's not actually doing a great deal. I mean, it's not really able to invade at all. And white can just look to exchange off rooks, exchange off queens, exchange off knights, and then we've just got this guy forever entombed in the corner. And how Leela did it was very nice. Rook f3. You're probably even looking to go g3 here. You could take, and then you can start hitting the black queen side with h4 as well. That's also possible. Stockfish started giving away material, trying to get free, but Leela just kept complete control. And these Leela playing really beautifully at the moment. Just really solidifying the king side, just hammering every time an extra nail into the coffin there. And bishop b8, queen e2, queen e8, queen f3, h4, making use of the opportunity to get a past h-pawn as well, knight g3, knight e4, and the game finished pretty soon. It's just complete carnage basically. But that was a second example again where I think if you just looked at this opening position with Stockfish, for example, this position after knight takes c4, you might have said, oh, looks completely fine, no worries at all. But only looking at this, only if you looked at this position with Leela, would you understand that? Would you see the evaluation and say, hey, there seems to be some danger, Leela's not satisfied. And then, looking through the variations, you start to understand, ooh, yeah, this bishop on b6 is a real problem. And I like very much the fact that it sort of links in what Leela did to this, classic game of Capablancas against Bogolubov. It's one of the things we did in Game Changer, that we were, always trying to relate some of the AlphaZero themes to classic human games. And I think it's it's a very worthwhile thing to do, and I'm still doing it nowadays, in actual fact, because just seeing typical themes that have appeared in human play before, but also happening at obviously a much higher standard of play with an absolutely unbelievable defender. It's incredible to see that those ideas can still be implemented in the absolute pinnacle of chess play. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that sort of gave some explanation as to why you should use the latest version of engines, and why you should analyze with different engines all the time. And I hope you enjoyed that. Do take a look at my new book, Re-Engineering the Chess Classics, which is just looking at classic games together with engines and finding amazing stuff in them. Obviously some tactical games, but really a lot of end games and strategical games where the engines just find amazing new plans, amazing new ideas, that give add real extra color to games that were already known to be brilliant and fantastic. So do take a look at that. 22 sample pages on the New in Chess website, so you can have a good look at it, to see whether you like it. But otherwise, thanks very much for watching. If you'd enjoyed the video, give a like, subscribe to the channel. That would be really nice. And otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and hope to see you at the next video. Thanks for watching.